Welcome to the IT Experience podcast. IT dashboards can look green while employees are quietly struggling. We call that the watermelon effect. This show digs into how top IT leaders turn experience into intelligence and prove real business impact. Brought to you by Happy Signals, the leading experience intelligence platform. Today we have an author on our show as our guest, Nora Osman, joining us from the East Coast in the US. And she has recently written a book called From Zero to Hero that I just finished listening to as an audiobook earlier today, actually. So timing is perfect. But I'll let Nora introduce herself before we go into the interview itself. So Nora, who are you, and a little bit about yourself, please.
So Nora Osman, founder and CEO of Norvana, boutique organization that is focused on fixing the problems with technology, with people, with processes, and really optimizing the human experience. And it's part of the reason why I decided to take some of those hardcore lessons and life experiences and write it in a book format that is the leadership journey. So the full title of the book, by the way, is Zero to Hero, the human experience in leadership and business transformation. And it is really about focusing on the things that allow people to show up in their very best version. So excited to be here. Just a little bit about my background before that. I actually had multiple roles in technology as a leader, focusing on service management, on organizational change management, on technology disruption and transformation, and different industries, including healthcare, financial services, hospitality, insurance, all these other industries. So happy to be here.
Thank you. And I think that background is so important for us, our listeners as well, to understand it, as our audience for Happy Signals is mostly comprised of IT professionals, leaders, practitioners, operators that are working in the service management space and anything related to enterprise IT. And one of the things, as I was listening to the book, I told you before the interview started that it wasn't what I expected. And one of the things that sometimes when reading people who write a book from a professional point of view, even if they bring their own viewpoints to it, is that they feel like a glorified CV of sorts, that it's meant to be a selling tool for their own services, etc. While your book really didn't feel like that. We met at the HDI event in Las Vegas a few weeks ago, and I remember that you told me already back then that you put your heart and soul into this book. So maybe my first question is like, why did you choose to actually do it that way and not just do like a business book that is business alone?
That's a really, really deep question, I have to say. And I acknowledge that it's a hard question. Most times people ask me, why did you write the book? But I think this is kind of a similar question. And I'm not trying to stall. I'm just setting the table here. I honestly believe that we are in a world of hurt for authenticity and for real experiences. There's so much out there from a leadership perspective. All of these acronyms, all of these frameworks, all of these complex concepts that you read the book and you feel overwhelmed and you don't even know how much of this you can actually apply. And a lot of people never even finish a book because it feels heavy. They feel intimidated. And what I realize is we enjoy watching movies. We enjoy listening to music. We enjoy hearing stories because it touches our heart. And whatever touches our heart, we can remember. So if you can evoke an emotion in people, then you can actually help them digest the concept better and it stays with them. And so for me, I started writing little articles and posting articles and little posts on LinkedIn for several years. And I found my audience responding to these stories and appreciating the highs and the lows of my journey, things that I shared that went sideways, things that went amazing. And so I fell into these hero moments, zero moments concept. And I said, well, what if I were to actually tell some of these stories in a way that helps people understand the main concepts that I want them to understand? And so it started to morph that way. As I started to write I didn't really have the plan to do it exactly in one way. It just started to manifest because I told myself, I'm not going to worry about the finished product until it's finished. Let me just tell what needs to be told. Let me explain things in very simple, common ways. And I'm going to lean heavily on my own stories and my own experience because that's the only thing that I know for real happened. So I spared very little expense here in explaining things that I felt strongly about, even to the point that I exposed myself a lot in my own zero moments and my very embarrassing situations. But I also thought that helps build trust with the listener, with the reader. And it's these stories that actually stay with people and they end up either retelling them or thinking about them later. I know that's a very
Yeah.
long answer,
No,
but I thought I'd take you through the scenic route because that possibly answers some other questions you're about to ask.
no, I like that answer because I think one aspect that isn't spoken about a lot is how that full human experience in a way does impact how what the context is at work, how our priorities might be, especially as a parent or if any other preoccupations outside of the work me and the work life at that point. If there is a clash between the two, it will reflect itself in one way or another. And you might be able to hide it at work, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't impact it. And in a way, like when thinking about
Exactly.
that change management and thinking about how people interact with, for example, with IT services, and especially nowadays when everything is digital at work, that experience, if there is friction, if there is frustration, and if there is a feeling that I'm not being given the tools that I need to do my work, it can feel a little bit overwhelming because it's not like work is the only thing preoccupying us in any moment, in
Exactly.
any point of time. So maybe the next question is then when when you were working in service management, and I remember from the book that it was one of your first managerial roles as well um, to lead a service desk team that was working in an environment where things were a little bit scattered in the beginning, but then you put things in order. How did you go about thinking, or what was your strategy, and has that strategy stuck with you? How you take something, understanding about humans, and then apply it to structuring an approach
Hmm.
in a way, like because you speak about this borderline OCD in the book that you like to bring structure, but how do you still
Mhm.
always consider the human while you bring structure?
So I need clarification on which of the two service desk operations are you referring to? The one that my first experience running a service desk, or the second one when I really knew about how to do it, but I had to really transform that second organization?
Let's go to the
Or
second one
you don't
because the
know?
first one was
Okay.
maybe the second one is a better
I was
example
brand new.
for like best practice.
So fundamentally, I feel that people genuinely want to do a good job. I don't think anybody gets up in the morning and says, I want to go to work and I want to suck at my job. I want to do bare minimum and just not produce anything. So I believe that people have good intentions. But if we do not help them understand the why they're doing their job, then they're going to do whatever they can do. And they may not know that they're not doing a good job or that they're capable of doing more. And so what you were referring to is a healthcare organization that tripled in size over 10 years, but their service desk was very, very bare bones, could do nothing more than a password reset. And at some point, I realized they just don't understand the business that they support. And they had multiple locations. It's a hospital, multiple locations. They even had a college of medicine, and they're in the Bronx. They're in Westchester. They're in New York. This is a very primary location and a very pivotal role that they have. And so I decided to give them a real world exposure. And I said, you know what? I'm dislodging them. I'm ejecting them from their seats. And I forced a 4-day tour of the facilities, but in a very concerted way. They would go through a tour of each department and speak to department managers and heads and hear from the manager or the head what they do in that department and see the equipment and see the space and the facility and see people in action And it's almost like the blindfolds came off when they did that. The hearts opened, the ears magnified in their ability to hear. The experience was transformational for every single one of them. And when they came back after 4 days, their responsibility was to share at least one aha moment with the team in a team setting. And so I think at the time that team was 26 people. So think about it, 26 consecutive weeks of a person going out for 4 days and coming back charged and excited and sharing what they learned. And then the fact that they got hugged, people that they hadn't seen for years, they'd never met, places in the company they'd never experienced. I mean, one of the tours included a county jail because that facility actually had inmates that were treated. They didn't know that we had a closed facility like that with heightened security. They didn't know how the robotics worked to put together the chemotherapy, I guess the liquids and the medication. They didn't know how the surgery departments were, how equipment was plastered to the wall or the ceiling. And when you finally take your blinders off and you actually see and you experience it, there is no way you're not changing the way you approach things. Now you feel a mission. You're part of something great. And so little by little, one by one, they all got turned on. And so they got out of the zombie mode that they were in and they took on the mindset of, how can I do more? How can I be of service? How can I help? I now understand the why. Let's all rally behind this cause because we can be superheroes for this community. And it was really a monumental shift for that department, but then it also set the rest of the IT department in that similar mode. They wanted to be part of that particular tour. And so that tour became an ongoing tour for everybody in technology because everybody wanted their teams to participate in the learning and the growth. And they saw the transformation in the mindset and how it shifted the way they operated in the service world.
Did you have any naysayers who doubted the impact that doing these tours would have before you
Of
started them?
course. The managers of the service desk, I had 3 managers, and they're like, how in the world are we going to do this? Do you understand how that's going to affect our ASA and our abandonment rate? And I'm like, yes, I understand. But sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. But you have to trust the process. And as they started to see people coming back recharged and transformed, that's when they're like, okay, there is a method to the madness here. There's definitely madness, but also, the byproduct is people came back having lost weight. Like when you walk for 8 hours, almost 7 hours straight for 4 days, and you're not used to walking. I mean, people were excited. They felt energized. They learned a lot. They reconnected with people in person. They felt like they got a hero's welcome. It was transformative. And it was just such a simple thing to do. Simple, but, complex to orchestrate, but still simple as a concept.
And what changed in the staff that went and saw for 4 days the reality? Like, what would you say was the thing that you hoped that would happen and that happened? You speak about it as being transformational, but what transformation happened?
Connecting with purpose. See, I used to have this core value set, which we coined together, my department, and it was 5 Ps. My God, I hope I don't draw a blank on one of them. The first one was passion. The second one was purpose. The third one was patience. The fourth was positivity. And the fifth one was pride. And those were the 5 Ps that embodied our department. So how can you be passionate about something that you don't understand? You can't be. So because they understood their purpose, they became passionate about being part of the progress and transforming. And that was, I think, the key cornerstone for them to understand their purpose, to feel that they have the power to support an organization in a way that was sorely needed and to transform the way clinicians, technicians, medical staff, everybody provided patient care. They were key to that formula. They were not just a necessary evil.
And so you said that other team leads and other teams when started to do that, and it really became something that was commonplace across the IT organization to really go and see for themselves. Do you know if it's still, that tradition is ongoing all these years later, or do you know how long it continued after you left?
What I knew is that we got disrupted during COVID because obviously you're not sending anybody into a hospital without PPE or while we're in a pandemic, right? So
Yeah.
despite that, what we did during the pandemic is recognize this is even a more critical time for people to be aware of what this organization is and its impact. So what we decided to do with the permission of the overall leadership is we decided to create a virtual class, a virtual tour. Instead of 4 days, it became 45 minutes. And we 360 recorded all of the I guess interviews and the check-ins with those departments, and we created the course and it became part of our LMS system. And after that, what I heard is that HR decided to include it in the orientation because it was so well done that it was beyond just an IT only exposure. It became something they could offer to anybody in the 35,000 person company so that they can get them exposure, whether it's because they're new and they're in orientation, or even if they've been there and they just never visited and understood the way the company works.
Yeah. And I think that part about like your book, when I was listening through the chapters, you can feel that there is this relentless push in a way to like get to where you want to come. In a way, like you're a fighter inside. And even towards the end of the book, I was starting to feel that maybe you even had to like almost tell yourself that you don't always have to be a fighter, but to actually like give yourself some space to breathe and to recover as well, like to pick your battles more over time. But really like this, you went in a lot of times, like maybe without really knowing like what you were getting into, and then just making the best out of it. And if I read, there's another book, you may or may not know this book, Linchpin by Seth Godin. Seth Godin is mostly speaking about marketing, etc. But he, in the beginning of the book, he's talking about how these linchpin persons in organizations are the ones that really make a difference. It doesn't have necessarily have anything to do with like managerial versus operational versus like where you sit in the organization. But the way that he describes it is that the hard work isn't lifting or shoving or sharpening. The hard work is being brave enough to make a difference. And I think that that last part
Exactly.
there, like the hard work is being brave enough to make a difference, was something that like you seem to have carried with you throughout your career. And what's the
You
driver?
know,
Like what drives you?
so ironically, can you see what this says? Is
A
it
goal without
saying it
a
backward?
courage. Yeah, it says
No,
courage.
actually,
Yeah,
it
courage.
says courage, right? So
Yeah.
I'm going to answer your question by first speaking about courage. So this mug was given to me by my kids as one of 50 gifts on my 50th birthday. Okay. Now I have the courage to tell you that was 5 years ago in April. Yes, I'm 55 years old, all glorious 55 years, right? I have no problem with that. But courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing things despite being afraid.
Mm,
So I talk about the do it anyway mindset in
yeah.
chapter 15, I think, of the book, or
Yeah.
maybe it's 16. I don't recall. And I talk about the high dive moment where you are so petrified of doing something. You know, it's not in your comfort zone. You are really not excited about doing it, but you push yourself and you jump in and you do it anyway, right? And so for me, I realized that, yeah, there are so many things I'm uncomfortable with. I am. And I know that the key is to recognize that that is a normal experience and feeling, and that you just have to push yourself beyond it, because everything good, everything great is on the other side of that fear when you actually do what scares you. And the person who says it best is John C. Maxwell, who says everything worthwhile is uphill. And so uphill has a lot to do with, an incline, a painful journey, getting out of your comfort zone, doing the things that you're afraid of. And so when you lean into your courage and your I guess your motivation to just execute, you start to push past that moment of freezing, and you actually make the motion happen. And last week, I think I was talking to AI, and I said, I talk about doing it anyway, and I talk about the high dive moment, but like right now, I just want to pull up a chair. I'm up on the high dive. I don't want to jump. I just want to pull up a chair and sit for a second. Can I just sit on a chair up on the high dive? I mean, I know I have to dive. I know I have to do it anyway, but I just need a moment. And sometimes you just need a moment.
Yeah,
You're going to do it anyway, but it's just okay to pause for a second and give yourself some grace and give yourself a break.
yeah. And what would you then tell to the person that, and this is something that we every now and then see when we speak to customers who are prospective customers, companies that are thinking about becoming more human centric in the way that they deliver IT services, is that there will be somebody in the organization who knows that it makes sense to understand what the reality of people is in those organizations so that IT could provide better services. But then they also know that it's not the way that things have been done before, and that if they go down this path, they might face resistance. So, what would you tell somebody who is in that situation? They know that it's the right way to go, but they know that they will face resistance. Like, what was your way of dealing with it when you were in those situations?
My God, I've stepped into so much glue over the years. My God, I have faced so much resistance. And I know that I was not always the most popular leader pushing for change. Sometimes you just have to realize it's not a popularity contest. I would rather be respected versus loved. And the
Yeah,
respect comes from doing the things that are hard, doing the right thing, which is not always easy. And I used to say this all the time. It drove people crazy when I would quote myself and I would say, do what's right and not just what's easy. What's easy isn't always right, and what's right is not always easy. But the
yeah,
magic in that sentence is the word just. Okay. Just like just do it for Nike. It's not do it. It's just do it. It's do it anyway. Even when you're not ready, even when you know you're going to get ambushed, and even when you know this is uncomfortable. And so you have to start to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because if you are in a very warm and fuzzy place all the time and everything feels so natural and comfortable, guess what? You are not growing. You're probably moving backward. And if you are too comfortable and you are not challenged and you're not afraid and you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing and you're probably missing out on a lot of opportunity.
that's really good advice. Just a second. And any finishing words as we're wrapping up this interview? What would be the one piece of advice that you tell people that are starting on their career or starting on these transformational journeys?
So this is an easy book to listen to. Would you agree? Zero to Hero. I
Absolutely.
recorded it myself, and that took a lot of courage. It also took probably 8 hours sitting in a closet, surrounded by all my clothes, because that was the only soundproof room in the house. This book is for a reason, not just a season. And I talk about very simple but powerful concepts that are very human centric. And one of them I don't think you talked about or brought up is the platinum rule. And I want to leave you with this. Treat people as they want to be treated. Forget about the golden rule, which is treat people as you'd want to be treated, because unfortunately, we are all different. That means we are wired differently. We have different DNA. We've got a different viewpoint on the world, on life. We have different experiences. And that is our power. That's our superpower. So lean in, look, listen, learn, get to know people, treat them as they want to be treated, honor them. And if you do that, you will have way more hero moments than zero moments. But recognize that every time you interact with a human, it's a moment of truth. They can be hero moments, but they can also be zero moments. The choice is ultimately still yours, right? But always think about the platinum rule because that is what will set you free.
I think that's a perfect ending to this interview. So, as we always wish at the end of these interviews, we say, stay safe and stay happy. So thank you for joining us today, Nora. And I do recommend people to buy your book, either whether as an audiobook or as a physical one. It is definitely one worth reading.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm so glad that you hosted me, and I look forward to hearing more happy signals from everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up. That helps others, your colleagues and peers, to find the show as well.